Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Kentuckiana Travel Ball Podcast. We are pumped up to be live with you on TikTok. We're live with you on Facebook. Our podcast, you can find us on Apple, iHeart, Spotify, you name it. Rick, what's up, man?
What's up, Teague? I've always been careful about what I've been saying, but now that we're live,
hey, you're going to have to
be
new level. Super careful now with this whole live thing going on. Once again, we have a special guest with us. I'm pumped up for our first live performance. I wanted to make sure we had a really good guest. So Rick Arnold is in the studio with us today. What's up, Rick?
Not much, guys. Thanks for having me.
So, Rick, I know you're pretty humble and you're not going to want to talk about this very much, but Kentucky high school baseball coach of the year, national NHFS Kentucky high school basketball or baseball coach of the year. Congratulations, man. Pretty awesome.
Thank you.
You know, and I know
That's
it's
cool.
and look, and I know it's a culmination of a good team, some good players, but there's a lot of coaching that goes into that too. And I know you kind of, again, you downplay that and put it all on the players, but you know these guys are pretty lucky to have you as a coach, and it's kind of the state of Kentucky is lucky to have you coaching high school baseball.
Look, man, it's thank you first of all, and I'll say this, and I've gotten a lot of texts and messages on this last award that I was just recognized with, and I'm I'm very appreciative and humbled and gratified and thankful for. But you're right when you say it's earned, because what goes into it's a lot of hard work. Coaching, if you coach the right way, is a lot of hard work, and that goes back to our culture. It goes back to the culture I have in my home with my wife and my family. But it's a lot of hard work. Now, being recognized as coach of the year in any capacity, and this year, fortunately we won the state, and there were several coaching of the year awards that either preceded or immediately followed that. But those awards, one, they're a product of hard work from the day you get hired, whenever that is, for any coach.
Of course.
Two, they're the product straight up of winning and having great players around you that do the right things, that follow the rules, that work their tails off, that work 12 months a year. I mean,
right.
That's really what it's about. It's a recognition of our program, our assistant coaches, and our kids most importantly.
So you guys would you end up being ranked nationally when the whole thing was done?
I saw us anywhere from 7th in the country to 12th.
Which is pretty awesome for your kids. And I know you don't get a whole lot into that, but I mean, as a high school baseball player, to say that you went out being a top 10 team in the country,
right. Yeah.
Pretty cool.
High school baseball player from Kentucky.
From Kentucky.
I mean, this isn't
right.
Florida or California
right.
or Texas where they're playing all year round.
It's cool, man.
It's Kentucky.
And look, I mean, I saw there were 4 or 5 publications, Perfect Game, and several of them that are
sure.
that have national polls, and I saw us, the highest I saw us was 7th, and the lowest I saw us was 12th. So, of course, we're going to claim we were 7th in the country,
right? Of course,
but
claim the lowest one for sure.
That is it's quite an honor again to our kids and our program and our administration for providing us with the tools we need to get better every day.
Yeah, I understand. Actually, hang on, sorry, that's me. So. What I want to do today, Rick, and as you know, on this podcast, we try to give value, right? So to our listeners, to the people that are following us on TikTok, whatever it may be, we try to give value to our coaches, our players, our parents. We want them to watch our little clips. We want them to pay attention to our podcast and get something out of it, something they can take and do next time they're coaching. If I'm a player, something I can take when I'm up to bat. So what we're going to try to do today is give just as much value as possible, kind of pick your brain, which is an endless knowledge of baseball. Before we get too much deeper, though, I do want to thank our sponsors, GuardianBaseball.com. I have on a nice Guardian sweatshirt here. Rick has a Guardian hat on. He's showing our TikTok followers there for our Facebook people.
It's a cool logo, by the way.
It is a cool logo. We want to thank Guardian Baseball. They've been a big supporter of ours, and they're doing a ton, not only in the baseball community, but for baseball locally, nationally. So Guardian's a name that you're going to hear for a lot of years to come. So if you need any sort of baseball needs, GuardianBaseball.com. Check them out. They have everything at really good prices. So GuardianBaseball.com. But Rick, so as we're in the off season here, so you are a state champion team. What does a high school off season look like?
Let me digress for 1 second.
Please.
We were talking about national rankings.
Yep.
And I said my piece on that, but most importantly, we were number 1 in Kentucky, so that was our goal.
Well, yeah.
The other stuff we can't control.
Well,
the only thing
exactly.
we can't control was
Sure.
being state champs, and
Sure.
we accomplished that. So,
Yep. Amen.
I hope you
failed
be
to
number
not
1
say
in the
that.
state.
Yeah,
Amen.
I mean, that was winning that last game in Lexington was, which it turns out to be the last game. The state tournament next year is moving to UK's facility, so we
that
won
place
the
is awesome.
ever state championship
Nice.
at where the Legends
Whitaker-
play,
Whitaker Bank.
Park, where the
Yeah.
Legends, and that's not a minor league
Yeah.
team anymore, so it's now an independent league
Yeah,
team. So
but that new stadium that University of Kentucky has is awesome,
it's
man.
it's like a spaceship.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
off the charts.
It's super, super
So
cool.
We're going there to win one next year.
There you
Well,
go.
hopefully, I mean, you're going to have some talent. So, hey,
Yep.
look, so Dalen Lyle, who got drafted, 42?
47th.
47th to the Washington Nationals, doing great in his offseason. I think he had a really good kind of rookie season. I know he rehabbed a little bit. But you got another one right behind him, a guy named Corbin Dickerson, who everybody's saying, man, this kid can flat play. So you got another star in the making here, right?
Yeah, Corbin's a fantastic player. He played with the USA Baseball, was down in at several of their events this year, and we came really, really close to making their final national team that competes against teams from other countries. But it probably should have made it. Quite frankly, you look at his numbers, and baseball's not necessarily a game of numbers, but they do matter. They do teach you and tell you something about productivity and an ability to compete at a high level. But we think he got kind of stiffed on that, but he represented the USA program in great fashion all summer and all fall, and really just got back, just completed that circuit and that part of his going into a senior year, that part of his fall season. So he's getting back in with us here as we speak in terms of our fall workouts, because he's been with the national team. So we're glad he's there. But
There you go. Now he can play with a little chip on his shoulder, right?
Where will Corbin play for you this year? Will he stick kind of right field, left field, or
he'll probably move to center field.
so? Because I was interested, because obviously Dalen had held down the center field spot.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if Corbin could play center field, and I'm also kind of curious, as you go from high school to college, do certain outfield positions translate? So if I'm a right fielder in high school, typically that means you can probably play left field as well, right? So how does that translate when you go to college?
Well, generally, right field, you tend to put the guy there that has the best arm.
Okay.
Center field, you might have the best arm in center field too. Take Mookie Betts, for example. He's generally got the best arm
Yep.
on his major league team, and he's generally a center fielder, but he played some right too. But generally the best arm's in right. The guy that covers the most ground is in center, and then whatever else you have is in left.
Sure.
That's not an insult to left. Oftentimes a left fielder, and our left fielder last year, Brady Willis, he could have been a center fielder for anybody in the state. He just happened to be the left fielder for us because
he's behind
Davis.
Corbin and
first round draft pick.
And he's not behind him anymore. I mean, he's pushing right now. I mean, he's pushing Corbin. Corbin's pushing him. And the thing about Corbin is he could play. He'll probably play center for us. I think that's be the best fit, and we'll figure that out as we get closer to the spring. But he can roll to third base. He could catch if we had to have him catch.
Corbin can catch?
Absolutely he can. He could play short or
right.
third.
All right.
And he can play anywhere on the field.
That's cool.
And if we wanted to make him a pitcher, he could be as dominant a pitcher as we have. It's just that in our program, the way he focuses on some things and the way we focus him through his offseason work, the best thing for him is to stay in the outfield, and someday you'll see him in the big leagues along with Dalen.
Oh, I think so too. I mean, the guy is trending to be an MLB player for sure. So certainly, Corbin Dickerson, the name you need to remember, because the guy's gonna make it at some point.
He's supposed to go to U of L, right?
Yeah, he's signed. He'll sign in October at Louisville. Or
Okay.
I think the signing date this year is in November. So he will sign at Louisville. And depending on where he gets drafted,
right.
he'll
Make
decide
that
what he's going to
decision.
do, just
All
like
right.
Dalen did.
Now look, so you said the best arms in right field. Like, so for us, from a 12U standpoint, we have our best arm in right field because we're trying to throw that guy out at first. Now, that's not so much a deal in high school, right? Or is it?
No, it's in high school very rarely. If you have a really, really astute right fielder, a really sharp hit ball, and a kid running that's not fast or not hustling, yeah. And we work on that occasionally. We work on
10-4.
looking for that, and we have some cues that we might yell out if we see it before the right fielder might see it. And again, in our program, Corbin's got as good arm as anybody in the state, so probably anybody in the country. But in our program, our right fielder this year, whether that's Paulie Osting or somebody else, that spot will be a strong arm as well, and we'll be able to throw runners out at first base if they give us that opportunity.
That's interesting. So
the right fielder, you're also trying to throw that runner out that's trying to stretch that, double into a triple or taking that
That's
extra
why
base.
you're trying to go from right field to third.
You got to make that throw from right field to third.
That's the longest throw, right?
And and that's why you want to have your best arm there, correct?
That's right. That's the ball that's hit maybe to your right as a right fielder that's going in the right center gap. You've got to backhand that ball and possibly try to throw that runner out going from first to third on a single. That's why that arm is there. Or a ball to your left, where you got to round it and come up and throw to third base.
Yeah.
Or obviously home is the longest throw, but when you're trying to throw to third base, that's from center field and left field, it's closer to third base than right field naturally. So.
All right. So my next question here, Rick. So we've got a team full of 12-year-olds that are quickly going to be 13 and 14. And a lot of the conversations I'm having with parents right now are, hey, we're trying to get your kid ready for the next level. So we want to make sure if your kid wants to play high school baseball, it's our job as their travel coach to get them into the position to where they are ready to step on a high school field.
Right.
What are you looking for out of these kids? And I know you've got freshmen right now that are playing in kind of a fall deal for you. What are you looking for when you're trying to decide what kids make your Trinity team?
Well, first let me applaud both you guys and anybody else out there that coaches travel baseball, summer league, high level baseball. I did it for 10 years of my life, so I spent a good portion of my life coaching at that level and learned a lot from it. And I certainly applaud the idea that if you've got a kid that wants to play travel baseball and they're paying and they're putting in the effort and the energy and they're doing some things off and on year round to play the game, hopefully they want to play at the next level. So the desire is the first thing.
Right.
In our fall program, every kid that's out there, it's voluntary. So they got to want to be there.
Okay.
And then if they're playing football or soccer or golf in the fall, they should be off doing that, and they'll get to baseball when they're done. But you got to want to do it first of all. Second of all, what we look for are athletes. And that's cliche-ish, and everybody says be athletic on the field, but it's so true because you might get 6 shortstops.
Yep.
And they come from all levels, all areas. All the positions. And different programs. And so, and a college does the same thing. It's much like the transition from high school to college. They want the best athletes. Mm-hmm. Now, that little more specialization in college because they're recruiting you as opposed to, high school. You're picking your school. But at the end of the day, the athletic kid, the kid that can do multiple things, because if he's a really good third baseman, but man, there happens to be a really, really, really good one right behind him or just in front of him, maybe he goes to first base, maybe he goes behind the plate. We got a kid, Matt Klein, who came in as kind of a catcher, middle infielder, really was only playing kind of middle infield and third base, and then we transitioned him back to catching, and now he's going to Louisville, and he's a potential draft pick.
As a catcher.
As a catcher, and a big-time catcher. He caught for the Red Scout team down in Jupiter, Florida this past weekend and played in a big event down there. A lot of pro scouts attend. He's on – I've already got pro scouts calling about him. So the reality is getting those kids ready at your level, what you do, what you guys do. And I've been out to your practices. I know what you do. It's worked with your kids. It's awesome to see those kids desire. So that's the first thing. Second thing is athletic ability, and then versatility goes right along with that. I think being versatile. Again, if you'll hear college coaches say, "I'll recruit 9 shortstops and I'll win," because they'll put one at first, one at second, one at third. Well,
typically your shortstop can play anywhere.
Absolutely, that's right. So that's what you want to do. Now, not everybody can play shortstop in high school, and good high school programs have multiple shortstops playing positions, and they might even want to move on to college and play shortstop. Mm-hmm. I've had kids at Trinity that didn't necessarily play shortstop for us that have gone to certain smaller colleges and ended up playing shortstop.
Right.
It's just, and maybe it wasn't until their junior year in college.
Right.
Well, that's what Jeff Floyd said. Even at our level, he's like, I've got 4 shortstops that are probably going to play shortstop in high school.
Yeah,
but
at their given high school.
I've only got one spot for it right now. So
No, and that's my Ironman baseball club team years ago. Trey Sweeney, he was a first-round pick of the Yankees. He played third base for me most of the time. Timmy Borden played shortstop for us, and Trey played shortstop. We had kids out of Scott County. We had kids out of other places in Louisville that played shortstop. Really good. Ben Metzinger. We had several kids that played shortstop that ended up going to Division I colleges playing third base, first base, catching, pitching, playing. Some of them playing short, some of them moving over to second, some of them moving to the outfield. So when you have that kind of desire and that kind of athletic ability, and this is where parents have got to be realistic, man. I've seen kids leave teams because they don't play shortstop on that team.
Right.
Look, if you're upset over some supposed political thing, that's one thing. But being able to compete, being able to endure, being able to overcome adversity. Those are critical aspects. And travel ball brings that out.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of dad coaches. You guys are dads. I was a dad.
Yep.
You know, I mean, my son was a catcher and an outfielder and a first baseman.
Yep.
You know, and he had other catchers and other outfielders he competed against. Like, you know, there are certain things that happen in this world that you just can't control. And in releasing your kids, Rob Saxon, our AD, talks to our parents about this every year. Release your kids to these coaches. Now, again, in certain summer ball coach situations or certain basketball or whatever other sports situations, there may be really tough times. But if you can't release your kid and let him compete, and I mean compete with a capital C, he's got to be able to compete day in and day out. He's not going to be able to beat out the average guy, whatever position he plays. So you've got to release him and let him compete. And summer ball is a great opportunity to learn from that, whether it be volleyball, whether it be soccer, whether it be football, whether it be basketball, and the best sport of all, baseball. But you've got to let those kids compete.
Oh my gosh, Rick! I'm so glad you said this because this is kind of a hot button topic for me. We're hoping to have Dan McDonald on at some point because I know he's big on. Hey, look, a lot of times these guys have gotten to me and they haven't competed for their spot. You know, that Dad moved them around so they could be shortstop. Now they're in a situation where they got 6 guys better than them. They don't know how to compete for that spot. So these better teams, so Jeff Floyd's a great example, Rick. I'm glad you brought that up. He's got 4 kids that can play shortstop. They're going to play shortstop in high school because they're probably going to go to different high schools. They're all going to be probably their best players. They're on the same team, competing, making each other better. And that's the part that I think people miss out on at this travel ball all the time is coaches, they just jump ship, or these parents jump ship.
Hey, man, let me 15-year-old year, the year I coached 15-year-old travel baseball, had one shortstop who I don't know if he's still playing, but he played Division I basketball at the University of Charlotte.
Okay.
Another kid was a 38th round draft pick by the Cubs out of Providence High School, Timmy Borden. One was a first round draft pick by the Yankees this past year.
Trey Sweeney.
And we had Ben Metzinger, who's a starting third baseman at Louisville now.
And is going to be a draft
and was an
pick.
All-American catcher in high school.
Yeah.
So those 4 kids play shortstop for one travel ball team. Another kid that ended up playing third base at a junior college out of Jeffersonville, he was a shortstop too. We just moved him kind of permanently offshore because he didn't have quite the lateral movement, but could have played it for most people.
Right.
Played it in college summer ball.
Right.
So, I mean, but those kids all found their way. I mean, they all found their way to the right schools and the right fits. And if they didn't, they moved on to the next one. But that competition, that ability to handle that adversity and figure things out, those kids didn't complain, but I'll be honest, some of their parents did.
Yeah.
And you know what? I mean, the kids didn't, and that's why they not only survived it, but they're thriving in what they went on to do later on.
Well, and I'm going to give you a quick story about my son. So, obviously, Rick, my background's golf and my family's background's golf, and my son hasn't really had the opportunity in golf that I have had because we've been all in on these other sports. What I'm trying to do is making him an athlete first and then maybe a golfer second. So baseball has been kind of at the top of our list and basketball. And so now he's in this elite group of golfers where it's kids his age and kids are winning tournaments all over the map. Actually, a kid he practices with just played with Tiger Woods' son in a tournament this past week. So he is in an elite group and these kids kick his tail and he knows it. And he's out there saying, man, I don't know if I can play with these guys. Dad was the first week. So second week he comes back and he says, you know what? I'm going to be able to beat these guys one day. I hit my drives farther than them. Mm-hmm. I feel like I'm more athletic than they are. I'm going to be able to beat them one day. And it's driven him. He wants to practice golf now. He's thinking about golf. And it's simply because of who he was around. When we would go play with me and my dad and whatever, it's like, okay, this is fun. But now he's like, I want to beat these guys because I want to be better. And it's driven him, putting him around kind of the best of the best has driven him. We're not running from it. It's something we're embracing. We know these kids are going to beat him in a tournament right now, but that's where you want to be. And so if you're on a team with guys that are better than you that maybe, all right, I'd like to play short, but maybe that guy's better. Well, what are you going to do to get better to where you can be that spot? Yeah. And I think that's the whole point of playing for a program like Trinity, like St. X, these better programs that they have. You got to go compete, and you've got to do that at an earlier age to know what you're getting into.
Hey, man, my first coaching job after I got done playing was as a JV coach at St. X. Most people don't know that, but I spent 5 years coaching there and learned a lot about myself, learned a lot about coaching baseball. Had a mentor who was the head coach there at the time, Joe White, and one of many mentors I had. And that's one of the things that I just gotten done playing. So being a young coach and coaching it again in kind of a high-profile position as a young kid who was still fairly immature in a lot of ways, that's the one thing I've learned. The one thing I took from that experience, amongst many great things, but the one most valuable was let kids compete. I had two kids, even this is in JV baseball in the early 90s, two kids that were really good shortstops. And I couldn't decide. I mean, like maybe today I'd have said one was better than the other, but then I was a little younger, a little less experienced, and I couldn't decide. So I played one of them at shortstop every day and one of them at second base, and every other day. And they rotated every other day. Their dads didn't like it at first because both of them thought they should be the shortstop.
Right.
So one played short,
Right.
one played second.
They were the better players. Sure.
And now this is in JV baseball. And every other day that happened, by the time they were juniors and seniors in high school, one won the shortstop job and one won, and they were both more than satisfied. Both of them. And then their parents, more than satisfied.
Interesting.
Because they were given an opportunity.
Interesting.
And yet, if one had been better, that much better as a freshman, they would have been this everyday shortstop. But they weren't.
Right.
You know, there were some things that went on there, and the truth of the matter is,
well, and I'm sure it made the team better too.
The experience, the competing, because everyone else competed too, because they saw these guys compete, and they were leaders, and they had the personality to be leaders, which is an advantage too. But man, their competition, their ability to compete, it helped increase the level across the board of their teammates.
Yeah, look, the competition factor is something that I think gets undersold. You see these there's a lot of parents that jump ship and go to team for whatever reason, and some of the reasons are probably valid, but leave your kid in a situation where they can compete. I mean, I really think that's going to make your kid better off for it. Even if they're not playing the spot they want to play right now, I think it makes them better off for it.
And it motivates you in the offseason. I mean, it just does.
So offseason, let's get to that, Rick. What should an offseason look like right now for a kid that's that 12, 13-year-old range, that's probably just winding up maybe a fall season. They're getting ready to go into what potentially would be an offseason where they may play basketball or some sort of winter sport, but what should that look like from a baseball standpoint?
Yeah, look, it depends on what else they're doing, right? I mean, I personally hope kids are playing other sports, whether they're intramural level sports or whether they're competitive level travel ball stuff. I'd like to see kids play other sports, especially, basketball and maybe soccer and whatever else they're doing to, stay in great shape physically. But from a baseball standpoint, and things have changed so much over the years, and you can read all these experts, and with all the data behind everything now, it's such a data-driven sport now, with all the improved metrics and all the technology that's out there. But as a general rule, what I like to see, and everybody's a little different, what I like to see is, as guys work hard on their game through, for us at the high school level, we're a little bit older than that, but I think this kind of correlates even to the younger kids, the 10, 11, 12-year-olds, is through about Halloween. If you're playing baseball, play it through about Halloween, the 1st of November. And then really in November, there should be some downtime, some rest time, maybe even some active rest time where maybe you're doing some conditioning and baseball geared exercises, swinging a bat a little bit or dry cuts or working on some things, hitting off a tee, but a little bit of downtime. One, I think for the younger kids specifically, to avoid burnout. I think that's a critical I think some downtime. I know, for me and for my kids, my own son, he went straight into football, and from football straight into basketball, straight into baseball. I mean, and that's what I did when I was a kid. Well, you get into high school, you do the same thing. It gets really, really hectic. And yet, when you're in football or you're in basketball, there's Sunday nights, maybe there's Saturday mornings, maybe there's Saturday nights. There's days you can get some baseball work in. And I think that window in November and say early December is a great time to let the body and let the mind, more importantly, kind of recover. And I think it's really important for an arm. If you read anybody's, any of these experts on arm care, they'll tell you rest for young kids is so critical.
Yeah.
Growth time is so critical. And you use if you follow the Jaeger program, they talk about rest and active rest, and then the re-entry phase, and then the actual phase of getting in shape, and then flat grounds, and then if you're a pitcher, downhill work. I mean, look, there's a million different plans you can follow, but as a general rule, I think that November window, early December window ought to be rest at a maximum active rest, where you're doing light work. And then I think, look, I mean, travel baseball, at least when I was coaching it, you got icebreaker tournaments in March, right? I mean,
March is when everything gets going again.
Maybe some even in late February. So March is around here is when it really picks up, and then in April you're into it. And in May, you're halfway through or better. And then sometimes at the end of June you're done. So really by that timeline, which is dedicated, if you're a dedicated player, that timeline is based on, the travel tournaments that are available to you. So, in the region. And so, I think in January you've got to be back at it. And I think, these indoor facilities, hopefully make a lot of money, but they're there to support that and provide that opportunity. And certainly I think getting after it in January, so you have even late December, maybe over Christmas break where you don't have school, where you can really maybe reacclimate your body, your throwing programs, that type of stuff. And if you do it a little earlier, great too. But I just think the window in November and at least half of December ought to be rest. That's just really critical. But then that reacclimation time and getting back into your game, and you can really swing all year long, but you've got to rest your arm and let your body recover.
Okay, so I hear you on the rest time, and you talked about maybe like 1 day a week. But what's that look like? So if I'm doing baseball 1 day a week, what am I doing?
I don't know. 1 day a week. You talking about in November and December?
Yeah, that's what you were saying. Doing some active rest. So if you are taking a night to concentrate on baseball, what do you want that night to look like?
That's tough. I would say you'd be better off, instead of like going an hour and a half or 2 hours one night, you'd probably be better off, going a half an hour 3 nights. And yet you're still not killing your body. And that could be just some swings off a tee. That could be some video work. That can be watching some things on TV. Not TV, but watching videos.
Yeah.
Having a plan that way.
I got you.
There are refining the mental part of base running, refining the mental part of, if you're moving from one position to another, or you're an infielder, so you've got to work on ground balls. What that can look like, Teague, is literally in your garage, rolling ground balls. Somebody rolling your ground balls from 8, 10, 12 feet away, and you're working on staying low, hands out front, forming the triangle, getting the ball out front, and working through the baseball and getting the exchange to the bare hand. That can happen, even if it's 1 night a week. That's a fine way to kind of refine your infield skills. And you're moving laterally, so your legs are getting some work, but you're not overworking your body. You're not killing yourself, and you're still not throwing. So you're still recovering. You're still letting that arm rest and recover. So I think that's one thing. You can hit off a tee into a net. If you have any kind of a netting system or hang a blanket over a rope, you can hit into that off a tee. And again, if it's 1 night a week and you spend a half an hour doing infield drills, if you're an outfielder primarily, it's just fielding balls in a do or die situation or in a safety situation, and then getting your swings off a tee. And again, the arm rest is the most important. The rest of your body can take that, especially if you're still playing basketball or another sport.
I like that. I think that makes so much sense. You know what's
in the basement? I mean, in the backyard if it's not 25 degrees.
I tell you something that I found interesting too, that when we're talking about playing multiple sports, when I was watching the Major League Draft, I can't tell you how many guys when they went down and said, well, this dude could be playing Division I basketball. He was a great basketball player, but now he chose to go baseball. It's amazing how many of these guys were multiple sport athletes. And you hear all this stigma of, well, can't do both of those in high school, can't play this. I mean, these guys who are doing it at the highest level are doing multiple sports until they get to pros sometimes.
Yeah.
So
look, my son played 3 sports as a freshman in high school, and you can, and we've got plenty of kids at Trinity on the football team.
Who your son is now a college baseball player.
Yeah, he's a Division I college baseball player, exactly, and he's an outfielder, and he was a catcher outfielder back then, and he got beat out, and he moved the outfit, and he's beat other people out in the outfield.
Right.
So the reality of any kid that plays multiple sports, the strength you get from that is you get different coaches' voices in your head. You hear different things. You have different mentors. You don't have the same old coach, and that's the only coach you're hearing from. So you're hearing different philosophies. And look, football's a little different mentality than baseball.
Yeah,
it's
they may bark at you a little bit more, and that guy may be a little more intense. And
in basketball, you've got to run and jump, and it's explosive. I mean, baseball is a sport where you've got to explode, accelerate, and decelerate constantly, especially as a defender. And ultimately, basketball, soccer, football, all those sports help that. And you can do these things. And and some of that you talk about, you hear people that, could have been a major college, that, sometimes that's sensationalism on TV, but they played that sport and they probably played at a high level,
played it really
based on their athletic ability.
Well, I know some of these guys that got drafted, they had offers to go play D1 basketball.
No question. Hell, Dave Winfield, a lot of listeners might not remember Dave Winfield, but he was drafted in the NFL, the NBA, and Major League Baseball.
All of them?
All 3. He was drafted by all. You don't even remember that.
I didn't. I know who Dave Winfield is.
Dave Winfield, Hall of Famer.
Well, even the younger crowd, like Kyler Murray was a Division I baseball player.
Well, Russell Wilson.
And Russell Wilson.
Sure.
I mean,
you go on and on and on.
All 3 for
Dave Winfield was drafted.
I didn't realize that.
I think it was San Diego State. I have to double check that, but drafted by the NBA. As a tight end or a receiver in the NFL, and drafted by a major league team.
Wow, that's incredible.
Played baseball, yeah. And
that's talking about an athlete there.
But again, but even the kid that doesn't isn't good enough to make other teams. That's the thing about everybody thinks a tri-sport athlete or a dual sport athlete has to make their team. Look, depending on where you go to school, where you go to high school, it's not really easy to make those other teams. But you can still be a dual sport athlete playing intramural basketball.
Yeah.
You're still playing the sport.
Good point.
You're not necessarily playing it 6 days a week for 3 hours a day. But if you love it, you're playing the sport.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't make the golf team, but you go play golf a lot,
right?
Because maybe golf's at the same
you're
time
still
baseball,
a golfer.
but you're still a golfer,
yeah.
and you can be a really good one,
right?
I mean, how many major league players are really good golfers? A ton of them. So they're athletes.
And I tell you look at J.R. Smith right now, who's trying to play. He went back to college to play golf. He's playing college golf.
North Carolina A&T.
It's crazy. He's playing, and he's out there getting his butt kicked, but he's grinding. What's a top level athlete going to do? He's going to make himself better. So
played 15 years in the NBA. So.
Yeah, that stuff's interesting.
You think we'll ever see another Deion Sanders or Bo Jackson that does it, pro?
Hey man, I played against Deion Sanders when he was at Florida State. Had the privilege of striking him out and walking him.
You struck out Deion? Did he steal a base when you walked?
Oh, when I walked him, he stole second and third. Right?
I
might as well give him a triple because he did it every time.
Right.
And it was fun playing against those guys. I tell my kids all the time the furthest ball I ever had hit off me when I was pitching at Louisville was Eduardo Perez, who they watch my son watches every Sunday night on ESPN. Nice. So. Those were great times and great adventures. And 1 week I faced Eduardo Perez at Florida State and his brother who played at Xavier at the time.
Okay.
And Tony Perez was the manager of the Reds at the time. And we played at Xavier on a Tuesday or Wednesday and against Florida State on the weekend. And I had a relief appearance against Xavier and then a start against Florida State. And it was really an experience to think about how different players they were. Because Eduardo was like Tony. He was a future major leaguer. And his brother was probably riding the last name, to his position. Nice. So,
Deion Sanders, prime time, man, he was so good.
Coach Sanders now.
Coach Sanders, that's right. I tell you what, man, that guy can get you fired up.
Oh.
I don't know if you've ever listened to him give a pregame speech.
I retweeted his thing a couple weeks ago.
Oh, man, it'll fire you up in a heartbeat. I mean, I have to put that out. So you had mentioned metrics earlier. I'm kind of curious. I know you guys are tracking a lot of different metrics. That from a travel ball thing, we have Game Changer, right? And Game Changer's tracking stuff.
Sure.
What should travel ball coaches be paying attention to on Game Changer? Because you got everything. You got your on base percentages. You got your batting averages. You got your strike percentages. At our level, when you're talking that 10, 11, 12, 13, what should we really pay attention to stat wise?
Offensively or defensively or pitching?
Both.
Okay. Defensively, I think it's really hard. I mean, you get some bad hops on some of these fields and you get some errors you wouldn't get. If you play on turf all the time, fielding percentage obviously has and chances. Yep. You got to kind of combine the two of those. Offensively, I think OPS, on base plus slugging. I mean, I think that's a big one because – look, if a guy's dinking and dunking and hitting a lot of little cheap singles, hey, man, he's probably a productive player. And look, if he's and
that means his batting average is going to be pretty good, right?
Generally, yeah. If he's got a good OPS, he's going to have a good batting average for sure. But if guys, a guy can have a really good batting average, he can hit 380 or 400, and he can dink and dunk and chunk balls in here and there, and maybe he runs really well, and that might play on a 50-70 field, and you get to 60-90, and all of a sudden now those single ground balls are outs because you got 10 more feet to run, and guys with better arms fielding them. I think it's all relative to the age you're competing against and you're playing for, but I think OPS to me is an important one for a general travel ball coach. Have an idea of, because look, if you got a guy, I even tell our freshmen, like, we take BP, and we had our machine up the other day at about, 28, 30 feet, and it was at 7.5, 10. It's a high contact junior, and that's what we hit when we want to practice off velocity. And we had it cranked up a little bit. I want to see how our freshmen handled it. And so,
what mile per hour are you saying?
That's probably coming there about 84, 85 miles an hour.
All right.
And I'd have to check with one of my coaches that knows more about that ratio than I do, but that's an 84, 85 mile an hour, which is a pretty legit high school fastball.
Okay.
And so, we tell those kids, look, if you can drive the ball through the infield or over the infielder's head, that's your goal. I mean, if you're a freshman, because freshmen are still 14 years old, right?
So and they're still developing their bodies and everything else.
Right, and we're in the weight room 2 days a week. So some of the kids are better now than they were a month ago because they've been in the weight room twice a week, for the last 5 weeks, 4 or 5 weeks, consistently, under our watch. They're feeling that pressure to work harder. And we try to, drive it through or drive it over the infielders' heads. And if you can drive the ball like that, then eventually you can drive the ball in the gap. You can drive the ball down the lines. And that's where OPS kind of comes into play because it's your on base, so your walks and your hits, hit by pitches, in your chink and chunk hits, and then. But if you can hit a few doubles, and if you can run, you can turn singles into doubles, so your OPS may be higher. You can hit the ball in the gap on some of these fields. It's going to be a triple, even if you can't run very well, because it's a long ways on some of these fields.
Right.
So so that matters. So that's one thing. I think for pitchers specifically, and look, let me go back to offense. I'm sorry, I talked about OPS, but I think.
Now, do you value that over batting average?
Yeah, I do. I personally do, especially when I'm evaluating a young player. I mean, again, a batting average is don't get me wrong, it's a number, so it does matter. Yes, we can use it to teach. Yes, we can use it to justify if we want. But you can kind of manipulate that a little bit. I mean, we count barreled up balls is what we count in our program in the fall. So I've got a little system where I'd put a red circle around a barrel up ball. Kid hits a smokes a line drive, and then shortstop jumps and catches the ball, and that's an out.
So in Game Changer, that's a hard hit ball, right?
Hard hit ball,
yeah. So we have that metric in Game Changer for sure.
Well, and so that's something I wasn't aware of, but we use iScore, so it's a little different. But barreled up balls are to me are a better method, or the hard hit ball. A hard hit one hopper, the shortstop, look, that might get through if it's in the 5.5 hole or it's back up the middle past the pitcher. But even that ball is, you got 4 infielders there for a reason. And now everybody with these Game Changer and iScores, you can get heat sheets and trends.
Oh, yeah.
So you can shift. And if you have enough data on somebody, you can put yourself in a better position.
Oh, you can, man.
So,
especially if you want
it's harder to get a hit
there.
Yeah. And look at scouting. I mean, you guys aren't scouting a ton. I get it. But we do.
Yeah.
Our coaches go out and watch other teams in our region all year long.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where I think we have an advantage over most other schools we play.
You have to.
We go out, and our freshman coaches. I mean, our freshman coach is a former varsity head coach. So, these guys know baseball. They know what's going on. They're getting out there, and we're getting information. And look, it's not perfect science, but you can increase your chances. And it gets back to the hard work thing, right? Gets back to a culture thing. But in travel baseball and youth baseball and high-level youth baseball, if batting average, I mean, don't get me wrong, a kid that hits 450 can swing it, or a kid that hits 650 can really swing it. But that kid that hits, 400 might also have, hit a bunch of choppers he beats out. So he's not really barreling many balls up. That catches up to you later in your baseball career. I mean, it just does. If it doesn't catch up to you at 12 years old, it'll catch up to you at 14 or 15.
Got it.
Because you hit those choppers again where catchers can move now,
yeah,
and they can field it and throw you out, 99 times out of 100. So,
right.
Or the third baseman can come in and
well,
make
you're running that extra 10 feet. I mean, the 60-90 makes a big difference.
No doubt. So, I mean, that's why I think OPS is a big one. I mean, and there are Game Changer gives you about 25 different numbers.
Oh, it's crazy.
And it's awesome. It's, but getting to know what those acronyms stand for is really important. And really, depending on your situation, kind of figuring out what your team's strengths are. If you got guys that can drive the ball and to get extra base hits, RBIs are critical. I know that's an age-old number, right? Run batted in. But if you've got a kid that can get hits, I don't care if it's a chunker or a ball in the gap, if he can drive in runs and be productive that way, they're incredibly valuable. Incredibly valuable.
Sure.
I mean, we mentioned Tony Perez earlier. I mean, Tony Perez, his biggest strength in the Big Red Machine wasn't his home runs. It was he had a lot of doubles. He hit some home runs, don't get me wrong, but he was an RBI machine.
Right.
He was clutch. He could handle the pressure.
Doesn't that matter a little bit where you are in the lineup, though? I mean, from an opportunity standpoint?
Depends. I mean, it depends. I mean, yes, your big RBI guys ought to be the 4, 5, and 6 hole, right? Because 1, 2, and 3 don't have as many opportunities for RBIs.
Sure.
Because they're getting one last at bat in that situation.
Okay.
But if your 7, 8, and 9 guys are getting on, right, and you've got a good travel ball club,
yeah,
your 7, 8, 9 goal hitters get on, your 1 and 2 guys should have just as many RBI chances, except for they get one less at bat a game, right, with runners in scoring position.
With running, it's because they're going to be starting.
Off, yeah.
Yes, because the first inning, nobody's on base. Right. So, and then, look, a lot of coaches don't think like that. But, I mean, there's where I think it's important to think of those things. I mean, you can take a 1, 2, or 3 hole hitter, 1 and 2 specifically, if their RBIs are 2/3 of what the 4, 5, and 6 are, they're getting as many RBIs.
Okay.
So you can, and there's general numbers there. I mean, you've got to use a little common sense and apply a little, a practical experience. But I think that's RBI. I mean, because it's one thing to hit a 2-out double with nobody on base. That's great. And then if the guy behind you gets a single, you score a run. But you get a 2-out double with 2 on, and you get 2 outs, 2-out RBIs. That wins state championships for you, brother. I can tell you that right now.
No, there's no doubt about it.
And as your comedian said, that wins a lot of World Series rings.
For the travel ball circuit.
14 World Series rings. So, okay, all right, that's offensively. How about defensively? How are we going to use Game Changer?
Look,
either defensively or pitching.
Pitching, probably more pitching.
For defense, I think I think the eye's got to be the bigger judge.
I agree, because there's a metric on Game Changer. It's called putouts, but it's really just if a first baseman's catching a ball. I mean,
right.
There's not a whole. You can't. That really doesn't tell you much.
And if you don't have a first baseman that can catch the ball, you shouldn't be coaching, and that kid shouldn't be playing.
Agreed.
That's the reality. But chances, and look, you have a kid that maybe plays shortstop that has really good lateral movement. I mean, take your kids. I'm sure one of them has better lateral movement than the other, just based on their body type right now.
Yep.
So he gets the more balls. So he might make a few more errors, right?
Yep.
But by the same token, don't discount that kid that's really sure-handed 2 steps either way.
Right.
Because that kid might be a hell of a third baseman someday.
Yeah.
Because you got a 1 step either way for the most part.
Yeah.
If you have the arm, man, it plays.
Yep.
That other kid goes to shortstop, and I saw that the guy from the other night in the Rays Red Sox game, the shortstop Lopez or whatever his name was, he fielded a ball and he threw it away in that winning run got the second base. Franco. And boy, I mean, they kind of criticize him for throwing that ball and all, but man, the night before he saved the game by making a similar type play.
Yeah,
so,
right.
I mean, I just think he gets the balls that a lot of guys don't get to.
Right.
So,
no doubt.
There's where you've got to be realistic. Now, when it relates to pitching, I think the walks. I think for me and for our kids, it's ball to strike ratio. Man, we want to pound the zone. We want to challenge hitters.
What is a good ball to strike ratio?
2 to 1.
Okay.
2 to 1 strikes the balls.
So you look at I hear the whip. Do you pay attention to the whip?
That's where I was going next. So whip is a direct correlation to ball to strike ratio because it's walks and hits per innings pitched. So walks plus hits per inning pitched. So that's the whip acronym. Well, if you're giving up walks and hits, you're in big trouble. I mean, if you're giving up just hits, you might get out of a lot of tough situations.
Right, because if you got a good defense behind you, they're going to get
you mix in some walks in there. And
so that's free runs. If you give up a hit and then a walk and then a hit, guaranteed to run. I mean, unless there's some crazy one hopper, the right fielder throws out a runner at first base like they do in travel ball or little league ball that they don't do in high school ball very often, or college or pro ball. But the walk, the whip is a big one. But I hate to make this too much, meat and potatoes here, but it's the ball to strike ratio is where that all starts from a pitching standpoint. And then look, we can get into spin rate, we can get into all the high level metrics you want. Your all's age and most travel ball ages up through say 14, that's not as important. But they get to 15, 16, 17 and college coaches come calling. Now all of a sudden, do you spin it at 23, 24, 2,500? What do you do? How does that work? And all those things, factor in at a higher level. But I just think for travel ball players, if a travel ball pitcher, if you are throwing more strikes than balls, you have a chance. Now, look, if you can make the ball move, if you have, hit tracks and some of these other metric measurements, the technology and the expense that comes along with those things, and you can tell how far a ball is moving left to right and how much sink you're getting and how much spin you're getting, then you get into higher level stuff, which we could talk about. It's a whole nother show, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is if you're throwing strikes and they're right down the middle and you're 2 to 1, you might still get crushed. But if you're throwing strikes and that cutter's cutting or that sinker's sinking or running or that 2-seamer's getting in on somebody's hands, that 4-seamer is a mile or two a mile or two miles to 1 or 2 miles per hour harder. Let me get it out of my mouth.
Got it.
That might cause the guy to be a little late and swing and miss. So. But I just think it starts for young pitchers throwing strikes.
It does. It's about, and honestly, we've seen it. We've got guys that throw it a lot harder than some other guys that can throw strikes. But sometimes the guys that just throw strikes can be just as effective because the kids are making them put into play and there's less walks and everything else.
And then you get a kid that maybe throws a lot of strikes but gets hit hard maybe 1 or 2 times through the order he's effective.
Yeah.
And then maybe that third time they've seen that same 78 mile an hour fastball that's coming down the middle, and especially, or maybe he moves it in and out, but now they can adjust and they've shared information in the dugout if they're a well-coached team, or they've had hitting conferences and they're more prepared the second time or the third time up. You get them out, you get someone else in there, but you've got to be able to pound the zone. And I can't preach that enough to travel ball coaches. And nobody wants to come to a game and watch walk. It's boring, right? They want to see action.
So when you said shared information in the dugout, how can we do that at a younger age?
Well, and look, I don't think it's any different for you guys than it will be for us. Ryan Wheat sits in our dugout, and I'm coaching third, and Coach Bernie Hokamp's coaching first, and Ryan is keeping a chart on the dugout wall, and he's monitoring everything that's going on, and if we, we've got certain numbers that we look for, which I don't want to talk about here, but some certain things we look for in terms of pitch counts per inning we try to get to and things like that. And so the reality for us is if we're not getting there, if we want to get to 37, if we want to get to 27 pitches an inning or 17 pitches an inning or 37 pitches an inning, and we don't get there, or at the end of 2 innings, if we want to be at 37
And Rick, to
pitches.
clarify to people listening, so we're talking about the pitcher you're facing getting to those pitch numbers, correct?
As an offensive strategy,
Correct.
we want to force that pitcher to throw X amount of pitches.
Got it.
Try to, because we're seeing more pitches, we're going to get more batters up
Makes
there.
sense. Makes sense.
If at the end of 2 innings, our goal is 37, let's say, that's almost 20 pitches per inning,
Okay.
and yet 20 pitches per inning, you're probably not scoring a ton of runs. But if that's our goal to get to 37 pitches at the end of the second inning, and we're 4 outs in, and the pitcher's thrown 12 pitches because we've hit 3, first pitch fastballs for weak ground balls.
Been there. Been there, done that.
Yeah.
Yep.
A couple weekends ago.
So, everybody's been there, right? I mean, the best of the best go there. So, we sit back and we say, hey, maybe we want to start seeing a pitch. Maybe we want to not swing at the breaking ball first pitch. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of teams, that's their philosophy. They don't, literally, the travel ball too, they just don't swing at a breaking ball. We don't make that mandatory by any stretch. I mean, we want to be aggressive. That's my philosophy in coaching. Attack. I mean, hitting is an offensive action. It's why they call it offense. You want to attack. You don't want to sit back on your heels and hope something happens. You
Right.
want to take it from them. I mean,
Right.
And that's why. So what you can do is you can, again, look, to set a certain goal and number of pitches. That's probably a little bit unusual. But you guys just both hammered it home. You said been there and done that. Well, now. If you've had 6 hitters hit and the pitcher's only throwing 12 or 15 pitches, man, you need to talk to your kids about, hey, let's take a strike. Let's see what happens here. Let's force.
We've had
Because after that
conversation.
game, I was like, oh my gosh, that's on us.
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
is.
like,
It really was.
It is
this
on you.
kid threw 39 pitches in 4 innings and beat us. And
Right.
we should have saw that.
That is
we
on
should
you.
have saw that.
I don't mean to be critical of you guys.
No, it is.
But it was on me when I coached at that
it
level.
is.
It's on me
It
now
is.
if it happens. It is on us. Now, if you've hit 5 line drives to the center fielder,
Yeah.
maybe you feel a little different. You should feel a little different.
Yeah, that wasn't the case.
No,
but-
we were chasing that first pitch.
That wasn't the case.
I'm with you.
Yeah,
and
man.
so that's something you can do, Teague. Another thing you can do is, look, you can, and especially like at the high school level, right? We have a little, maybe some teams we don't, but as many as we can, we have a little bit of a scouting report on. And generally speaking, especially at the travel ball, especially on Sundays at travel ball, right?
Yep.
Somebody's probably saved somebody, but those other guys have done what earlier in the weekend? For sure. Think of the number 2, 3 guys they have in their bullpen. They've probably thrown what?
Oh, one
A
or two
couple
innings.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, especially if it's the second or third game on
Yeah,
Sunday.
yeah, for
right,
sure.
Where you're getting the semifinals,
Oh,
finals.
no doubt.
So they've got one guy left. I mean, that's what I always had. We had one guy left. If you didn't go 5 or 6 innings, we weren't going to win.
Right.
But, so if you know that, and that's not really scouting, that's really just kind of common sense.
Yeah, it's
in
common
travel
sense.
ball.
Sure.
And again, having experienced it and done it a lot, it even applies in high school some, especially in a state tournament where you're playing 3 and 4 games.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Back to back.
at our region tournament, same thing. So if you can get through that starter and get to a next guy who might have better stuff, but maybe he's really tired, or maybe he's already gone 5 or 6 innings, or close to that limit, whatever that limit is in a tournament you're playing in. Hell, you increase your chances.
Well, in your
You
state tournament, the finals, that's exactly what happened. They ended up pitching a kid that hadn't pitched all year.
Yeah, in relief.
In
Exactly.
the finals.
Yeah, in relief.
In the state championship game, a kid, and seriously, he had like 1 inning the entire year.
And then the kid we faced was an electric young kid. Committed to Louisville already. Really, really good. He'd thrown a couple innings earlier in the tournament, so we'd seen him a little bit. We knew, what some of his strengths and weaknesses were, but he's still that good.
Yeah,
Right. So
right.
we were just that much better on that day. But yeah, we got to their bullpen, and we knew that their position players were their backup pitchers.
Right.
Were their best kids. Kid in Godwin, who actually was their center fielder, played at Trinity his freshman year, and family moved, so he transferred to Kraken. Great family, great kid, but. He was probably their number 1 guy to bring in. He hadn't thrown yet in the tournament. He was like the number 3 starter, and they hadn't needed him. But he was in center field, and they couldn't get out of the inning. So they brought in a kid who, a couple innings, and we knocked him around. And all of a sudden, a 3 or 4 run lead turns into a 7 or 8 run lead. And man, Katie barred the door. Yeah, I mean, it was
We were ball game at that point.
But we look. That's not a plan we had in mind.
No, sure.
But you adapt.
It just kind of happened.
You adapt. But we had goals, pitch count goals. I mean,
Right.
and we attained those goals. I mean,
Right.
that's an offensive philosophy, and again, but if you break all this down, we could spend hours talking about it. If you break it down, it comes back down to ball strike, ball and strike ratio. 2-to-1 balls to strikes. If you're throwing twice as many strikes as balls, you have a chance. And if you don't, your whip's going to be a lot worse. The batting average against you is going to be a lot worse. That's another thing for pitchers, batting average against. I mean, if you're a pitcher and you throw a lot of strikes, but their guys are hitting 417 off you, you're not getting it done. Right? I mean, the ball strike ratio is good, so I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth.
I'm throwing 80% strikes, but they're hitting the
but they're hitting 520 against me, right?
Getting shelled.
So, and then ERA obviously factors into that too. So, but I mean, all of it works hand in hand, and I just think so many people worry about things and overthink some of this stuff. But if you really just break it down to some simple, if you use the ball to strike ratio, or if you use the offensively, if you're using the OPS and you're looking at some basic numbers in Game Changer, you'll have an idea of how productive your kids are. And again, a real easy one is just RBIs and batting average. But
I was talking to a former player of yours, dad, the other night, and he was talking about catcher pop times. Talking about it was something that his son had worked on it, and they were trying to hit a certain goal as far as it was like 187, I think, was by the time he got the ball out of his hand to second base. Is that something like some of those type of metrics? Is there anything like that people our age need to be thinking about, looking at, working on? Let's just take this catcher pop time thing, for example. I know our catcher, who is a legit catcher, who is a absolute stud. I know he has no idea. Nobody knows what his pop time is.
Ask him what his pop time is.
There's no clue. He'd look at you sideways.
Right.
As was his head coach, because I don't know.
And he's 12, going to be 13, right?
But is that something we need to be looking at?
Yes. Starting next year. I mean, look, no. Not until you get to a 60-90 field.
Okay.
When you're full-time on a 60-90 field, that's when it matters.
Got it. Makes sense.
I mean, there's a lot of kids. If you really, and I know there's coaches that do it, just like there are coaches at 11 and 12 have radar guns, and that's fine. And I know you watch the Little League World Series, they have radar guns and all that. I'm just not a big fan of all that, especially on a smaller field, because you just don't know, that kid might not ever grow.
Yep.
And then that kid that's a little bit uncoordinated might grow in his body and be a beast. Yep. So you've got to keep perspective. Gets back to what we talked about from the get-go on this podcast was, release your kids and keep things in perspective and do things right and let them compete. But, look, if you want to, what I would suggest instead of a pop time, putting a stopwatch, and everybody, it's cool, right? Some travel ball guy, I'd love to hear the guy, the comedian, he'd be funny talking about this, but
we'll ask Mark about
every
pop
Tom,
times.
Dick, and Harry coach walking around, right, with a stopwatch, right?
Yeah.
I mean, look, you got to know what the hell you're doing with a stopwatch.
Right.
I mean, you got to know how to clear it out for number one and get back to zero. But
you just like to twirl it around your finger, right?
And look, I do that all the time, but I know what the heck I'm doing with it too, right? That's why I carry it. But you are literally, you can put a stopwatch on a 11-year-old catcher, and like you said, your kids don't know, you don't know, and that's why you're successful coaches, because you recognize your weaknesses. I mean, that's what I try to do, even as an experienced coach. I mean, there's some things I don't. Last time we talked about a rule that I wasn't sure on. Right. A couple umpire buddies of mine listened to your podcast where we were talking about that. I mean, I love the dialogue, man. It's awesome. But I really believe with all my heart and soul that you can put a stopwatch on and you'd know who's faster. But what you should do is put two kids side by side and let them compete. Hell, put two catchers together, put two pitchers. It doesn't have to be perfect. But if you say go and you flip the ball to them at the same time from 10 feet away and they got to catch it and you lay down, a hat and a bag at second base and a hat next to it and they've got to throw to a middle infielder.
Just see who's quicker.
Because what they're doing is, their pop time's going to get better, but what they're doing is competing.
Yeah. See who's quicker.
I mean, look, we try to do something every day in our practices that creates competition. We can take BP and we can field ground balls all day long. We can do fungal sessions. We can do, we can do 21 outs or 27 outs if you're a college team. You can do a lot of things that put kind of pressure on kids. But man, let them compete. Having a few races. Like when we run our 60s we do it every so often. My God, last year when Dalen and Corbin would do it, man, they'd be the last two because everybody know there were a couple guys close to them, but everybody would know Dalen and Corbin were going to be the race. And almost every time Dalen was just a 100th of a second faster.
Right, just a smidge.
And it's because he was a senior. He was older. I mean, you give Corbin another year this year and bring Dalen back, I guarantee you it's probably reverse or the tie. So it's and just let them compete. I mean, put your shortstops out there. I mean, I do this in tryouts. If I've got kids, this is not for any Trinity people out there listening, I might take two kids that are maybe the ones that we're trying to decide, do we keep them, do we cut them type thing? Put them out there at shortstop, just the two of them. Now you can't isolate them, everybody, but make them be the last two. And you hit one ground ball and hit the other one the ground ball in the same place and see how they react, see how they respond. Let them compete, and even for starting jobs. That's how sometimes I make the determination. Who plays second, who plays short? put them both at short. Now in practice, you can isolate them. Now you're not embarrassing anybody. They're competing they're already on the team, but put them there and hit them ground balls and let them see. One of them throws 3 away out of 10, and one of them throws 10 out of 10 right. And you've got a stopwatch on them, and you're seeing. It tells them they know.
It makes
it's their
a lot
job
of sense.
to tell their parents. I mean,
like it.
If you're doing that in a practice and you've got somebody right now who's catching the last game on Sunday, and you've got one kid that throws the ball way, way, way better, unless the other kid's just a machine blocking the ball and just a better receiver, but if all things are equal and throwing is the one difference, let them compete, show them, help, ask their dads to come out there and be the flippers.
Right.
I mean, there's things you can do to really
that's a good point.
share and I mean, hell, I don't close any of my practices. I mean, I'm not going to let opponents' people in there. But if our parents want to come watch, man. I mean, I'm confident enough and thick-skinned enough that we believe in our culture. We believe in our practice schedules. That come watch and hopefully you'll get an idea.
How about post-game talks? Is that something you allow parents in on at this age?
No. It's your age?
Our age.
God, I thought you were talking about me.
No, obviously.
Because the further I go out in left field or right field, the more PO'd I am.
You can tell.
Well, we've done a little bit of that too. When we take the kids out on the field, you can probably tell we're upset about it.
Watch Dan McDonald when he's right by the foul line at first base out of their dugouts at the game. He's happy.
He's in a pretty good mood.
When they're out by the warning track, man, there's some four letter words come out of his mouth.
But at our age, do you let the parents linger when you're doing your post game talk?
Let me tell you, when I coached at your age, I did. Absolutely.
And we do too.
I did.
And I'm saying we don't. I'm just asking if that's the right move or not.
I almost encouraged it because look, and again, this gets back to the culture, and for me, it's in our program. For you, it's on your team and your program. And look, that starts with guys above you too that run your program, right? I mean, there's got to be a mission and there's got to be a culture. And I really think, one thing I do every day at Trinity, and I've already got freshmen that are probably sick of hearing it, and pretty soon they'll just be oblivious to it. But I still say it. I forget occasionally, but I say it 99 days out of 100. When they leave our practice or our scrimmages or our games or our workouts, make sure you thank your parents, man, or your grandparents or your aunts or uncles,
I've
neighbors,
always heard
whoever,
you say that too.
Whoever it is, because somebody's providing for you. They're providing that glove, whether you've got a $50 Wilson glove or a $350, whatever snakeskin, whatever they sell those, whatever those sheepskin, whatever those gloves are, whatever they are. There's somebody providing that for them.
Most of these kids aren't paying for this stuff by themselves.
Right. Most of them aren't delivering papers anymore to pay for, right? We don't have paper routes anymore. So these kids are being provided for. So I tell them to thank, and by the time our kids are juniors or seniors, now I'm not around the freshmen every day all year long. I am this time of year, but I'm not, come the spring every single day. I'm at practice whenever we're not practicing, but on game days when we're two different places, I can't be. But I try to stress that to my coaches too, to thank them. And I mean, I expect them to get in the car and say, thank you, Mom. Thank you, Dad.
Yeah.
If they're embarrassed to say it right there when they get to them, walking on the bleachers, that's fine. But say it somewhere.
Say it somewhere.
And if a neighbor's driving you home, thank the neighbor when you get out of the car, and thank your mom and dad when you get inside, or dad or grandpa. Because, everybody's got a different situation, and who knows what they may be, but you can always thank somebody. And it could be anybody. And I just think that's important. And I think for you guys, when you're involving parents in your conversation, whatever positive reinforcement you're giving, parents are hearing that too. Because we all know there's going to be that dad that gets in the car and blasts his kid. There's going to be that dad that gets in the car and they don't even talk about sports. They're talking about going to Burger King or going to get a pizza. There's that dad that gets in the car and, he doesn't even understand baseball, right? I joke with my wife all the time. My daughter in volleyball, we call my wife Coach because she's always, we joke with her. It's in fun, but we tease her about, I call her referee when she's mad at a referee, and I call her coach. She's not mad at the coach, but when she's thinking that, that she could coach at that level. Well, and I, they call me the same thing in football or basketball, right? So it's all in good fun, and it's all everybody's a Monday morning quarterback in some capacity. Yep. If you're a parent, you just are. It's just human nature. And coaches that get mad about that are fools because, hey, man, we do it too, given certain, maybe not to the degree some people do it, but you still do it, even if it's internally. But if you let your parents hear the positive reinforcement you're giving these kids, and maybe the constructive, critical, feedback you're giving them, hopefully they'll go reinforce it. Hopefully they'll reinforce that. Hopefully they're building off that. Now, look, you're going to have, and I'm sure you all experience it. If not, you will at some point. You have some parent that's going to disagree no matter what because they just know more. That's just the nature of life too. That one you just got to take the good with the bad. But if you're trying to share that with kids, sometimes they're tired. Sometimes you talk too long. At least I know I do. If at that level, at travel ball level, if the parents are hearing it, they might reinforce it. And
Yeah.
if so, I think it's a win-win for everybody.
All right, so 2 more topics and we'll get out of here. Obviously, when we talk baseball, Rick, it just goes on and on and on. So thank you for doing this. You know what? Before we stop, too, because I always do this at the end, but we are giving away an Easton Hype bat. Have you heard of those? It's the new Easton bats. They're
Giving away
nice.
another one?
They're pretty cool. No, well, we haven't officially given this one away yet.
Oh, okay.
So we have our winner. So we're announcing the winner is Megan Gardner, who actually her son Jude is actually on our team. So we're excited about a new bat coming to the team. Thank you to Guardian Baseball. Thank you to Easton for doing that. That was an awesome deal by our sponsors, Guardian Baseball. And we've got more giveaways coming, but I just wanted to mention that real quick before I forget. Rick, something we had a long conversation about that I think is super important is you have talked to me about what you call a loser mentality. And it's something that I'm trying to instill in our kids not to have. And you have a couple ways of telling your players, hey, you're having a loser mentality right now. And a loser mentality is blaming others for actions, those type of things. Can you talk a little bit about that for me?
Yeah, look, I've said this, and I've even got one of my travel teams I coached when I think they were 13. At the end of the year, they gave me a Louisville Slugger bat that on the barrel it said excuses are for losers, because that was my theme of the summer, because we had coached them when they were I think we were 14. I coached them when they were 13, and it was great. Everybody did great, And then 14, there were some position battles and some other things, and some people started to whine, and so I just started talking about, I put an L up and I put an L above my bill, and I would say, look, man, excuses are for losers. We don't make excuses around here. I don't tolerate it. We don't accept it. If we get beat on a bad call, we might have a conversation about that's a tough break in life, but we're not going to sit here and make excuses. We could have done a lot of other things to not make that one call be the end all be all. So I'm a big believer in that, and I think that all starts with hard work. It starts with getting out of bed in the morning and having a glass half full, not a glass half empty mentality. I think if you allow yourself to start making excuses at any point in the day, it'll just continue the rest of the day.
Yep.
And a day will turn into a week, and a week will turn into a month, and a month into a year or a season. And I think sometimes, and different kids have different type of parents. You might have a military parent. You might have a parent that's just the opposite of that. You could have anything in between. But I just like to preach and travel ball. I made it a big focus, and I do with my high school team as well, is we just don't allow excuses. You've got to get up off the mat and go back to work. And look, the true test of a man, and I believe this with all my heart and soul, is how you respond after you get knocked down. Do you get back up and fight? Do you get back up and compete? Because if you get back up and compete, you have a chance. Because everybody gets knocked off their pedestal at some point, and everybody has tough days. And if you take a tough day and say, hey man, it was a bad day, tomorrow's going to be better, and you get up the next day with a glass half full mentality, you can have success. But if you go to bed thinking, man, it was their fault and his fault and her fault, and then the next day you get up with a glass half empty, man, you're going to have 2 bad days in a row.
Yep.
And I'm a big believer in that. I'm not a big motivational speaker. I'm not, I've read and researched and studied a lot, but I just believe that, making excuses is the worst thing you can do in baseball.
I got you.
And in life.
I got you. And I just wanted you to mention that, because that's something I want my players to hear. And I'll probably take that segment and make sure they hear all that, because, I think that's important. And I think that's it's a life thing,
Yeah.
right?
Look, you're going to make an error.
Yeah.
I mean, it's inevitable.
Right.
And you can't have one kid on a team, showing terrible body. We talked about this last time.
Yeah.
Showing terrible body language. A pitcher, throwing his arms up in the air if a shortstop makes an error. I mean, my goodness, he's got to get the next guy out. He's got to get a ground ball double play. So that's an excuse. If you're showing bad body language, that equals an excuse. So those are just things that all kind of merge in together, and you can either choose to be great, at least compete great, or you can choose not to. And I don't think there's a lot of in between.
So last time on, I asked you what your favorite drill was, and you gave us what we use now. We call it the 18-out drill for us, when we have 18 outs or we start over. Actually, it was funny. Our kids were talking, Noah, and it was talking about it. He said, remember we were doing that 18-out drill, and I dropped it on the 17th? They're like, yeah, we remember.
They're like, yeah, of course we remember that.
though,
Yeah,
man.
yeah. He was like making fun of himself about it.
Pressure better now.
It was
That's good.
funny. Exactly. It was kind of funny. Give us a pitching drill, Rick, that teams can do kind of in an everyday practice, or something that teams should be doing as far as pitching goes in a drill aspect.
From a throwing or from a just a general pitching standpoint?
General pitching standpoint.
All right, I'll tell you something that we love to do that I think is really, really good. You take and you put 3 lines. Like we might have 12 pitchers on our varsity level, so we take 3 lines of 4. And look, on a travel ball team, you've probably got 8, 9, 10 pitchers, right?
Well, honestly,
12,
all
11,
of them pitch at our
Perfect.
age.
So you got 12 kids. You take 3 lines of 4. one up on the rubber just in front of it, and one on each side, just off the edge of the dirt grass.
So
area.
one on the mound and two on the side.
Two on the sides, and you have 3 fungos from home plate, or in your case, probably better just to roll balls.
Okay.
And you
got 3 coaches at home plate.
You have three, dads or coaches. Yes,
Got it.
And so I'll start on the right side. So as you're the coach at home plate, you're facing the pitcher, and he's on the right. That right side, you're doing nothing but either rolling a ball that they got to field, run. We talked about accelerate and decelerate. Accelerate to the ball, decelerate, field it cleanly with 2 hands. Butt down, chest over the middle of the ball, shuffle and throw to first, or you roll it in between. And you can even have if you want to make this really complex, put a first baseman out there, and they roll it in between, and then they've got to get over to first base, take the angle up the line, and catch the flip. That's what that line is doing. And once they take their round, they go to the middle line. Okay.
All right.
And the middle line. So you got 2 options here: bunt, field a bunt, or ground ball to the right side. And what you're doing is you're reacting to anytime you throw a pitch, and anytime a ball's hit to your left as a pitcher, you've got to break to first base. You've got to train them that. So this is training them that.
Are you having them in their motion, like they just finished pitching and then you roll it, or are they just standing there?
No, they're faking a throw. They're from the stretch probably, but
finishing their delivery.
At least, it's just a short delivery to the plate with no ball in their hand. You can have them throw it, but that's with 3 lines and young kids, that's not a good idea. You can have them. This is a dry ball drill, air drill. They're just faking a throw, and then you roll it, and they've got to field it. So that's what that line's doing.
Okay.
Then when that person's done, he's got to jog to the middle line, and so the guy in the middle now. Those pitchers in line have got to be back behind the mound, and what they're doing is they're making spin move pickoffs to second base.
The middle line is.
The middle line is,
and that's from the mound on the rubber.
So they're on the rubber spinning and throwing is one part A of that second line drill, or part B can be you can have them just field a throw, and you can roll a ball, they can field it and turn and throw it for a double play.
Got it.
So they know the shortstop's covering. They do 2 things. They come sit on the mound. Well, they step off the mound. And they you get the sign from the shortstop that I've got the throw, and they acknowledge it. Right? You should be teaching 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds that, so they know who they got on a comebacker with a runner on first base. You got to do it from the stretch because that's how you throw with a runner on first base. You roll the ball, they got to field it, spin, and throw to second base. So the first line, the right line, if you will, is fielding bunts or fielding rollers to the right side. The middle line, or the line on the actual rubber of the mound, is either fielding bunts and throwing to second, or a pickoff move to second base, spin move, or an inside move. You can change it up. Pick one or the other on a given day.
Got it. Sure.
And then when that guy's done, he rotates to the line on the left.
Got it.
The line on the left is doing nothing but fielding bunts, spinning glove side for a right-hander,
Okay.
and making a throw to third on what would be at some point. You guys probably aren't doing this. I hope you're probably not doing this yet, but we have a bunt coverage. College teams have a bunt coverage where you've got to try to get that out of third, and that's kind of a do or die where they're going to sell out, getting that ball and kind of catch it, spin, and throw to third. The keys being they've got to they've got to accelerate and then decelerate, field the ball, chest over the ball, spin glove side if they're a righty. If there's a lefty, they've got to field it with both hands, bare hand and the glove, shuffle or not shuffle, and just make a quick throw to third because they're facing that way. And if you think about it, the right line's going to first, the middle line's going to second, the third base line, the left line is going to third, and then when they do that drill, they shuffle to first, they go to the first line.
Got it.
So you go from 1 to 2 to 3.
Got it.
And you have you can do this for 15 minutes. They're going to be worn out because they're moving and and they're going to make some mistakes. You can stop everybody and instruct, or you can stop one line and instruct. But you probably want to stop everybody because they're changing lines. So you get all the kids in one line. If you stop too long, but you can share. Those are 3 things that are critical parts of baseball. Pitchers fielding their position. Right? It's a variation of PFP, which is pitchers fielding practice, but it's a way to do it and get everybody involved. And the other thing is, you get your third now. For us, we've got just third baseman.
Right.
We've got just first baseman. We've got just middle infielders. You have to have some dads.
We'd have to have some dads out there, but that's doable.
Right. Or you can put those kids that pitch and play those positions, rotate them out there and have 3 in a
or
line.
just rotate
them in.
3 in a line and 1 kid at each position, or whatever. I mean, there's variations of that. But look, that's something we do regularly, and we do it with a lot of intent. So, are you a little bit, you're starting a little left or right, but you're still getting the mind. It's a mental drill as much as anything, because you throw that pitch from the right line, from the first base side line, and you see a ground ball, you've got to get to first base. I mean, that's your job. If it's in front of you, you got to come and get it, explode, get it. Decelerate, field it, accelerate, and throw the ball through first base. I think that's as valuable a pitching drill.
I love it.
As
it
you
keeps
can
everybody busy too,
and it keeps everybody busy, and it's a great way to end a practice.
Yep.
It's also a great way to begin a practice.
Yep. I love it. I love it. I want to thank our viewers that are on live with us with TikTok, our viewers that are live with us via Facebook. Rick, thank you so much, man. Again, the value that you provide on these things. Now, people say it in the comments, and we've seen it. We've got a video with you that's gone a little viral on TikTok. It's amazing. So I can't thank you enough for being here.
Hey, man, I'm humbled and flattered and thankful to be here. I appreciate you all the time.
Thanks, Rick.
GuardianBaseball.com. Go to Guardian Baseball and put in the code Kentuckiana Travel Ball for an additional 15% off. Once again, we want to thank, and we are humbled that Guardian Baseball is a sponsor of ours. We want to thank them for all the support. So please check them out. Please support them. And if you're watching this on Apple Podcasts or listening via one of the podcast channels, please give us that 5-star review. Give us a comment. Give us a like. That helps us with our channels. It helps other people, other coaches see it. Thank you so much.